We are Samantha and Kelly. We're Results by Nature. And the purpose of this podcast is where we come today and we talk about what's actually happening with your skin and what answers usually run a lot deeper than what's on the surface. Whether you're navigating hormonal shifts, you've been through treatment, or you just feel like nothing is working the way it should, you're in the right place. Kelly and I built this podcast because we've lived it. We live it. I lived experience, her clinical excellence. That is what brings us here to the podcast today and why we created this for all of you guys. So, without
Welcome,
further
welcome.
ado, yeah, without further ado, we are going to move into it today. Today, our topic is why the skin has gotten worse when you started doing more. So, some of us, I can speak to myself, you go in and your skin is looking good and then all of a sudden it's not working anymore, so then we start to navigate or try different products. We start adding in other products, think that we're adding in better products, we're creating more discipline, but yet our skin is getting worse. So I know for me, it's something that I notice that when my skin starts to kind of spiral, my first go-to is always to reach for more as opposed to just scale back. So from a clinical perspective, this is a question that we get from your clients as well as people that I know just in general in their 30s and 40s that ask me, if someone is sitting down with you, Kelly, and says nothing works anymore, what are you actually hearing?
First and foremost, compromised skin barrier. Like, if nothing's working, that means nothing's penetrating. So that means overtreating, using too many actives, switching products too quickly, inflammation that's been building up over months or even years, depending on how long this has been happening. And it's not really from the client's lack of trying to get their skin better or them being lazy and not doing their skincare routine like consistently. They're probably doing everything right with the information that they've been given. The problem is the logic to that or the information that been given is no longer accurate.
Got it. Well, that's one of the things that we talk about today is that the client today is not the same that they were even a year ago, but certainly not 5 years ago or 7 or 10 years ago. We are dealing with so much more stuff in life, hormones, ingredients, what we're putting on our skin, what we're ingesting in our body. There's just like a lot more. So today's client's not the same as they were, 5 years ago. And that's one of the things that we talk about that too. Like, so what you're saying is like, if I were to see my skin kind of freak out and I'm like, why isn't this working anymore? Well, let me do a little bit of research and I find this product over here and, oh, this looks like it's got a pretty good active. And I've got reviews of all these people saying, oh, this cleared up my skin or whatever the case might be, whatever thing I'm trying to address. If I'm starting to go stronger, but then my skin in particular starts to freak out, and create more reaction. Is that like more of what you're talking about when you say, when you're talking about escalation in treatment or
Yes.
escalation in skincare? Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. So that escalation or that layering upon layering of actives to try and improve things because so much out on the market today is use more, do more, be more aggressive. Here's what you're going to get for instant gratification.
Mm,
And the thing
right.
is it's not really that those products are the problem or that actives are the problem. It's escalating them, compounding them layer upon layer, or using different kinds in the morning and in the evening to try and combat something that is not even getting through the layers of the skin anymore because the barrier is so compromised now that it's just in protection mode. So
Gotcha.
it's just the barrier doesn't have the capacity to even receive them any longer. If they can't receive them properly, then they can't use them properly. And then it's escalating the ingredients, right? But then it's also escalating the problems.
Right. And so where do you think that came from? Where do you think like is it just because we live in an information age right now that we have access to so much information, but we don't necessarily have I shouldn't say we don't have access to because obviously we have access to anything at our fingertips in terms of information, but where do you think like the barrier capacity limits came from? If you just kind of gave a broad, I know that every person is individually different, But, like, if there's something going on in their body combined with what type of work they do, combined with the types of products they use, the types of are they over treating? Can you speak to some of that? Like, what is causing a lot of that barrier capacity breakdown?
So there's so many factors to it. So here's where we go back to, and what I've always thought, like from 20 years ago when I um, went to school for
Mhm.
general aesthetics, symptoms, we're taught to treat symptoms. And I think that because symptoms is what we see, symptoms are what we feel, symptoms obviously are what we want to get rid of. And I think understanding that it's not the symptom that you see that's usually the problem, or that's causing the issue. It's actually like our whole system. It's in our environment. It's in lack of the nutrients that our food provides these days. It's also our fast paced society where we're just on the go grab food so that we have some kind of sustenance in our body, but it's not necessarily the right kind of food. Stress, whether that be good stress or bad stress. And so we have that hormonal and cortisol push, and we get into that fight or flight, and basically that survival mode. And our whole body kind of looks inward for that. So, pulling hydration from our body, pulling nutrients from our body. And if we just don't have that full whole system capacity, we don't have anywhere to pull that from. And so we really see all of those symptoms then start to appear a lot of times in our skin. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be acne. It can be a skin condition like rosacea or eczema. It can actually be breakdown of collagen and elastin. So what we see is as general aging, we can age faster because our whole system isn't working properly. And like I said, it's pulling everything within. It's our skin that's suffering. And so that's what we see. A woman that goes through divorce, or even a man that goes through divorce, of course, their skin looked really resilient. They had no problems. And then all of a sudden, they look 5 years older.
Yeah.
Skin is sagging more, it looks more dehydrated, pores are more pronounced, fine lines and wrinkles are now actually deeper wrinkles. And that's a whole system stress, not just a skin issue. So, really, that's what we're looking at. And that's where we want to build that education piece is understanding that it's not symptoms that we're treating, actually, it's the system that we're treating. And when we treat the system and treat it as a whole, then our actual symptoms will improve.
It's the whole thing is fascinating to me. It's like all of it. It's like how it's all connected, you know? It's like your gut health, your skin, it's your gut health, it's your mental health, your emotional well-being, your physical health, like everything. It's so tied, isn't it? It's
It
just
is.
it fascinates me. Yeah.
It actually is. So even with your situation where you and your husband were spent 10 years going through IVF and infertility, when you were doing that and you were adding more, like what really was the driving, we talk about like what really was the driving factor because you had the load of synthetic hormones, right?
Right.
And so, I think we'd like to hear you speak more on, like how your skin reacted and what happened and like just take us through that a little bit so
Okay.
that we can understand it really wasn't just the symptoms that were driving your acne, your cystic acne, your histamine reaction, but what was happening in your system that drove those symptoms.
It's interesting that you bring that particular time up because, for almost 10 years for listeners or viewers that don't really know our story or how Kelly and I came to be, my husband and I experienced some version of infertility for almost 10 years. So there was a series of trial and error for that period of time. And if you look at a social media post, I posted one time a table of all my hormones that I had to basically inject for a 7-day period just to try to get my body to produce follicles the way it was supposed to. The whole goal of that on the IVF side was to extract eggs, right? But my body emotionally, my body physically was under so much systemic stress, not just trying to override the body with hormones and to get it to function on the IVF side or the fertility side, but just trying to get it jump started. It's almost like, you're like, you take your car into the mechanic, it's not working, and you're like trying to do all these things and try to get it just to start. So there was a lot of that going on. That was one layer. The other layer was just the emotional stress that it puts on your body. That was happening. Even though my husband and I were very grounded, we were very connected, and we still are, but we were very rooted in our foundation. It was still a major stressor. It was a stressor for us because,
Absolutely.
you're going through a lot of grief, excitement. I mean, your emotions are a roller coaster. And then on top of that, you're trying to navigate how to eat healthy, what ingredients to use, what not to use, and all of that stuff. So when I looked at my skin, your question was, what do you think was driving like my need to kind of get my skin under control? I think at the larger picture of that was I was trying to feel safe in my body. And a lot of us, I can speak for myself, at that time was seeking outside of me to try to create calm. And so I could see what was happening on my face. So I was trying to actively, externally correct a problem I could visually see, but I wasn't navigating what was happening internally. Like I, at that time, didn't have any sort of self care rituals that I was going through to try to keep my internal well-being calm and safe and balanced. So that's kind of more of the holistic emotional psychology part of it. But logically, I thought, well, gosh, I've got acne. I need to be aggressive. I need to apply this ingredient, salicylic acid. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay, let's go with glycolic acid. Oh, that's kind of helping, but still, now my face is like red and inflamed and looks like an apple, a red apple. Like, so I was making it worse. And then you kind of like, so much for me at that time, you want to look good and you want to feel good externally because I didn't look good and feel good internally. And so when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, so this is like a deep emotional like share right here. But when I was looking at myself in the mirror, I didn't actually recognize who I was because I didn't look the same. I didn't sound the same. And I certainly didn't feel right in my body. And so I think I was just trying to control it on the outside when really I needed to be looking like what's happening internally. And so when I came to you, I was a hot mess. I was a hot mess. So that was what was going on for me. Uh,
Yes. And that's really, really such a powerful story because when we see things on the outside, that's what we want to treat. But everything goes so much deeper. But then when we do take it back to the just the skin level, right? So if we were separating the two, the hormones and everything that's going on in your life at a deeper level, and just the skin alone, and hear me out here because this is like really important, but when you start overstimulating on unstable, imbalanced skin barrier, then what it does is it creates more reactivity. So we talk stimulation without stability, and now we're creating reactivity or overreactivity. And so when you look at it and you look at it at a whole, it comes back to really what's happening in the whole body that we can treat to stabilize everything, which then, right, everything in the system, the emotions, the grief, the influx of synthetic hormones, how you're feeling about yourself, what you see in the mirror, how you sound, looking like a completely different person to yourself, feeling like a completely different person because that's what hormones do to you.
yeah.
And then how so much it has changed your skin. I mean, that's such a powerful story. And I hear that not in your situation, not with your particular situation, because it's a powerful story in itself. But in clinic, the same thing. And diving deeper is really figuring out what's happening in the system so that we can change all of those things and get them back on track to having an overall sense of well-being.
Thank you for that. It's interesting because you talk about it creates more reactivity, and so there's 2 parts to that reactivity stone. Because it's like, on the treatment side, like, you love reactivity. In our last episode, you talked about reaction. Hey, estheticians, we thrive on that, like, we're looking for that reaction, but we're not looking for destabilization reaction, which is
Right.
completely different. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yes. And so I like skin that's reactive, that reacts quickly to treatments, that blood
right.
flow increases quickly, completely different kind of reactivity when you're reacting to a treatment or products or something that you are inputting into your system. So, yes, definitely two
Yeah,
different kinds
2
of, from a
different
clinical
things.
aspect and a personal aspect, completely different. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's gonna lead me t oh, go ahead.
So basically, like, I think you had said previously, your skin was never sensitive. You could use anything, it never reacted to anything. So then, what kind of was that turning point for you to have that mindset change where all of a sudden you were thinking, my skin's just sensitive now?
I think it was a accumulation of things because at that time, again, I had always taken care of my skin. I used really good products, but if I kind of look back at that time, I remember very clearly working with an esthetician. She's like, "Well, you don't really need anti-aging. You're a little too young for that. Those products are a little more aggressive than what you need." And I'm like, "Anti-aging, that's like prevention." You're in your mid 30s, you're thinking, I can use skincare that I don't really, at that time I didn't really have fine lines and wrinkles, luckily, actually. Um, Not to say luckily, like that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying at like in my mid 30s, that wasn't a struggle for me. But when all of a sudden I started developing acne when I never had acne as a teenager, which is kind of a hallmark, what, right? Talk about how acne as teenagers, and there's a lot of teenagers that struggle with that, but I didn't. That wasn't a struggle I had. But all of a sudden I had really bad acne, but it was very cystic acne. It was very prevalent along here, and there wasn't really anything that I was using at that time, even though I was using really good products, that was correcting it. And so I think for me, that was kind of the turning point to go, well, wait a minute, let me kind of take a step back here and look at what I'm using, what's actually active, what's not active. And then on top of that, my endocrinologist who was saying I needed to stay away from this whole list of ingredients, which, were the endocrine disrupting chemicals. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That was the turning point.
Yes. Okay.
Mhm.
Got it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people too think that if their skin turns red, if it gets a little reactive when they're using an active, that their skin is sensitive. And a lot of times, again, that's where we see the difference from like sensitive skin or imbalanced, destabilized skin. And where like knowing the difference in clinic can help make a big difference in how you help treat a client. And so, really, like, we go back to the differences in that sensitive or imbalanced barrier or reactive. And honestly, like, sensitive skin is basically a type that you're born with. It's just thinner skin. Nerve endings are closer to the surface of the skin. Products are felt more quickly and more deeply. It doesn't mean that sensitive skin is reactive skin, although a lot of times the two do go together. So,
Mhm.
really, what we're wanting to talk about is skin barrier and how it's destabilized or how it's imbalanced, and how imbalanced skin or destabilized skin is so different. And it has to do, again, with whole body, our environment, hormones, stress levels, products that we're using, too many actives stacked on top of each other, too many years of inflammation building. So,
Mhm. Yeah, too many treatments. You do have kind of like client, not you, but people that are kind of addicted to treatments. So they're maybe bouncing around to different estheticians, getting different treatments, too frequently.
Yes.
Yes.
And many times I hear, "Oh, I had a treatment and I had a reaction to it." Right? And didn't that happen to you?
It did. Yeah, in that particular instance, that was a time where my skin was I was going through fertility. I hadn't started IVF at that point, but we were doing hormone therapy, and so I had always been kind of the combination skin type, and then as I started pumping my body full of hormones, it started erring more towards sensitivity, I more reactive, which we now know is more destabilization of the barrier. But I had gone in to see someone who was highly accomplished. I mean, she was very personable and wonderful. But I don't remember her ever asking me kind of what was going on with me or what was happening in my skin. And immediately she used a little bit too aggressive and my skin just it blew up. It blew up. And she was able to pivot it pretty quickly and get me calm and under control. But in that conversation with her, there wasn't ever a conversation about what was happening internally. And I never really reflected on that. At that time, it wasn't until later when I learned more about how this is all connected that I thought, gosh, well, that could be a missed opportunity for so many people who, have some sort of autoimmune fertility, something happening within their body, some sort of context that maybe the esthetician isn't really asking those questions because they don't necessarily know to ask those questions. Some of
Right.
them. Yeah.
Right. And it's not that the esthetician is bad or that she doesn't necessarily know what she's doing, because we don't know until we don't know.
Right.
And a lot of times that's what comes up in clinic. And so learning from that, educating yourself more, then we can provide more education for our clients. And so there's so many things where we're just taught in school to treat the symptom, and mass marketing for products is doing exactly that, mass marketing to treat the symptom for that instant gratification. And that's one of the big things, of course, here at Result by Nature that we want to change in this industry is actually educating the public and educating other estheticians that there's more to their protocols than just treating the symptoms, but treating the skin as a whole system.
Right. And, I want to kind of bring up something that I wasn't actually like planning on talking about today, but you bring up a really great point because that leads me to that mass marketing piece where, you know, you hear about like Nehemiah, for example, and the wonderful benefits of that. But you wrote something recently that we're going to be publishing that where you talked about the ingredient literacy. How come that is also a missing gap of estheticians not necessarily basically that estheticians needing that ingredient literacy to just not only know what the ingredient does because they do a lot of them do know that, but then they need to know the mechanism of how it all works together to actually make the most impact on the skin.
So to answer that,
I
I
can cut
have to
that out.
say, so I've been doing this for about 22 years. In school, we basically go through 5 to 7 months worth of training. So, one, it's a limited amount of training time. But I'm going to say this basically in any of the medical industry, it really is. And I have seen it grown not for the better in the last 20 years, is that we're literally in the aesthetics field, in the medical field, we're taught only to treat symptoms. And we're not taught at all that there's underlying things. I'll give you an example just from my personal experience. So I didn't have the greatest skin, especially in my puberty years. So what's that hormonal push, right? Plus
Right.
stress and grades and school and, boyfriends and, all the different things, of course.
Yeah.
I still was fighting hormonal issues or acne from when I went to school at 35 for aesthetics, and was told over and over again that food doesn't affect your skin. But yet there's that old saying out there that you are what you eat. So where
Yeah.
did that come from? And there are no clinical studies out there at this point, except that big study that the guy did from McDonald's and eating and and obesity and
Yeah, I
that
forget. Yeah, but I know what you're talking
that
about. Yeah.
thing. But there are few and far between because who, of course, do we want to force feed all the wrong kinds of foods just to see how their skin reacts? So there
Right.
are no clinical studies proving that skin affects your skin, that food affects your skin. Skin affects skin, yeah. Um, that the way you eat affects your skin, but that there are so many of these foods that affect your skin.
Right.
Any red fruit that you eat is high in polyphenols, which is high in antioxidants, which help protect your skin.
Nice.
So there's such a contradiction out there. But basically, I mean, I could go on for hours about this,
Yeah, we
but
could deep
basically,
dive.
it's not taught. It's just not taught that your system as a whole is really what is affecting your skin. And so the world is too fast paced. It's getting worse and worse. Doctors have 15 minutes to treat people. Estheticians have a longer amount of time to treat people, but because we're taught look at the symptoms and not the system, that's what we're taught. And so education, I think, or different education, taking a different spin on education, is going to be momentous for this industry.
Yeah, I think just that whole continuing education piece, if I use my previous experience in dental, working with dentists who are highly proficiently trained to be technicians and to be excellent technicians. But if they want to be excellent at endo or periodontal or ortho, there's all these extra layers of education that they have to go through, right? And then on top of that, they're not taught how to be business owners. So if they're lucky, they get like a couple of hours or one semester of business class. I don't think a lot of them actually get that. But, so there you can see that in a lot of different industries. So I think that that continuing education piece is really paramount for estheticians to start evolving to the modern aesthetics, the aesthetics that we're seeing, but you specifically are seeing in terms of your pattern documentation of context-based aesthetics.
Absolutely. Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes, I know. It's a live and learn experience, right? We all come out of school
Yeah,
green and unfortunately a lot of times we learn because mistakes have been made, but there's so much information out there that can actually be taught in order to not have that happen.
yeah, I agree. Fantastic. Well, I think that this is a good closure for today's podcast. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think we covered
Okay.
a lot of material.
Think we did. I think we did. We just want to tell everybody that's listening or watching, we want to say thank you for being here and spending time with us. If anything that we said or spoke about resonates or landed with you in any way, we would love to hear from you. To subscribe to our Spotify channel, our YouTube channel. You can email us at hello@resultsbynature.com. It's on Instagram at resultsbynature.com, or excuse me, at resultsbynature. And then, of course, threads and all the socials and all the things. You can find us there. But we'll be back soon with another episode.
Have a great day. Bye.